Hollywood's toughest working-class hero thought he was just walking into a friendly interview. But what happened on The View turned into one of the most explosive live clashes TV has ever seen. Mark Wahlberg showed up ready to promote his latest movie. But instead, he found himself ambushed in front of millions of viewers. If you think you've seen celebrity meltdowns before, think again. Because this wasn't just a spat. It was a full-blown battle of egos, past mistakes, and the very meaning of respect. The cameras rolled, the audience cheered, and Mark strolled in with that signature Boston swagger. But something was different today. You could feel the tension, thick as smoke in the air, clinging to every glance and every pause. He wore a navy suit, flashed that polished Hollywood smile, and shook hands with the co-hosts. Yet the real showdown began the moment his eyes met Joy Behar's. "Welcome back to The View," Joy began, her grin sharp as a knife, her tone dripping with something more than just pleasantries. She teased his introduction, lingering on the words latest film like she was already setting a trap. Did the audience catch it? Oh, they did. Mark's smile held firm. "Thanks, Joy. Always a pleasure to be here, polite, controlled. Almost too perfect, like a boxer keeping his guard up before the first punch lands." Joy tilted her head, lips curling into something halfway between a smirk and a dare. "Oh, I bet it is," she said, her voice cutting like glass. Then came the jab. "You've had quite a career. Would you actually call yourself an accomplished actor?" The crowd let out a nervous chuckle, like they knew a storm was brewing but couldn't look away. Mark blinked, steady but clearly caught off guard. "Well, I've been fortunate," he answered evenly. "I've worked hard, and I'm proud of my projects." Boom! Joy's laugh exploded, sharp and dismissive, slicing through the air like a knife through silk. Hard work? Or just playing the same tough guy from Boston in every movie? Because honestly, if you've seen one Mark Wahlberg performance, you've seen them all. The room froze. The tension was so thick you could practically hear the sound of Mark's jaw clenching. But he didn't explode. He folded his hands calmly, voice quiet but firm. "Well, Joy, I'd argue each character has depth, if you're paying attention." "Oh, I pay attention," Joy snapped back, her words dripping with venom. "I just haven't seen any depth. Your characters are either angry cops, angry soldiers, or angry boxers. At some point, you've got to admit, you're just playing yourself." Even Whoopi shifted in her chair, uncomfortable, ready to step in. But Joy wasn't done. She waved her off, eyes locked on Mark like a predator circling prey. Mark straightened in his seat, gaze fixed, unflinching. "If that's your opinion, you're entitled to it," he said, voice low but steady. "But I think the millions of people who watch my films and find something real in them might disagree." Joy let out a sneer, mocking him with exaggerated air quotes. "Yes, the relatable everyman." The studio fell silent. Every eye locked on the table. You could almost hear hearts pounding as the standoff reached boiling point. "Only this everyman also owns mansions in Beverly Hills and wears $1,000 suits," Joy fired back, her words slicing like a dagger cloaked in a smile. Mark chuckled softly, but his eyes betrayed that simmering irritation, the kind that says, "Keep pushing, and I'll push back harder." "I haven't forgotten where I came from, Joy," he said, his tone tightening. "You can be successful and still stay true to your roots." Joy's expression hardened instantly, her voice snapping like a whip. "Oh, please. You're as Hollywood as they come. You make millions pretending to struggle while real people are out there actually doing it. You don't speak for the working class. You left that behind years ago." The audience froze. The silence so sharp it could cut glass. Mark inhaled deeply, his Boston accent creeping into the edges of his words, as if his old neighborhood was calling him back. "Now that's a hell of an assumption, Joy," he shot back. "You don't know me, and you sure as hell don't know where I came from." Joy leaned back, arms folded smugly, like a queen surveying her battlefield. "Maybe not," she purred. "But I know what I see. And what I see is a man who cashed in his street cred for a big paycheck and forgot what it means to actually fight for something." Mark's fists clenched under the table, though his face stayed calm. Stone still, almost too calm. You've got a lot to say about me, Joy, he said slowly, every word like a loaded bullet. But it sounds more like you're talking about yourself. The audience gasped, a ripple of shock rushing across the studio like a sudden gust of wind. Joy's cheeks flushed crimson as she leaned forward, her voice razor-sharp. Oh, trust me, Mark. We'll get to me. But right now, we're talking about you, and I'm not done yet. Mark leaned back just slightly, narrowing his eyes with a controlled fury. Neither am I, he replied evenly. It was calm, too calm. The kind of calm you get right before the storm breaks. The commercial break loomed like the bell before the next round of a heavyweight fight, and everyone in the studio knew they were about to witness something unforgettable. When the lights came back up and the cameras rolled again, Mark sat with his hands clasped tight, tension etched into his jawline like stone. Joy leaned forward, her grin gleaming with defiance, and maybe just a flicker of glee, like she knew she was stirring a fire no one could put out. Whoopi and the other co-hosts sat in silence, eyes darting between them, looking less like TV hosts and more like spectators, trapped inside a cage match. Joy didn't waste a second. She struck first, again. So, Mark, she began sweetly, though her tone dripped with poison, this new movie of yours. Let me guess, another angry Boston guy with a chip on his shoulder? Or did you finally branch out and play an angry Boston guy in a different hat? The audience chuckled nervously, unsure if they should laugh or hide under their seats. Mark smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. His voice dropped lower, calmer, but laced with steel. That's cute, Joy, he said. But if you actually watch the film, instead of just reading the press notes, you'd know it's about redemption. The word redemption hung in the air like a challenge, daring Joy to take the bait. About a man trying to make things right, Mark began. But before he could even breathe, Joy pounced. A redemption, she sneered, clapping her hands together with theatrical flair. How fitting. Since your entire career has been one long attempt to redeem yourself for what you did before Hollywood swooped in and bailed you out. The words cracked through the air like a whip. The studio gasped, sharp, stunned, electric. Mark's back stiffened, but he didn't take the bait. Not yet. His voice was calm, steady, ice over fire. You want to talk about my past? Fine, I've made mistakes. I've owned them, and I've worked my ass off to build something better with my life. But Joy wasn't letting him off that easy. She leaned forward, her smile sharp as glass. Owned them? Or just swept them under the rug, while flashing that charming smile for the cameras? Because to me, it looks like the same old Mark Wahlberg, just in a nicer suit. The tension thickened. Mark's lips pressed into a thin, iron line. You really enjoy tearing people down, don't you? Joy leaned back smugly, arms folded like she just won a round. I enjoy calling out hypocrisy when I see it. You pretend to be a champion for the little guy. But at the end of the day, you're just another millionaire who made his money pretending to care. The audience murmured, unease spreading like wildfire through the studio. Mark's fingers tapped the armrest once, before folding calmly in his lap. His voice stayed low, measured, but there was steel underneath. You don't know me, Joy. You don't know what I do when the cameras aren't rolling, and you sure as hell don't know what I care about. Oh, but I do, Joy snapped, her voice rising, Brooklyn grit cutting through every word. You care about box office numbers, you care about image, you care about staying relevant by playing the same tough guy again and again because you're too scared to take a real risk. Mark finally let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. You know what's funny, Joy? You sit here every day preaching kindness, equality, progress, but the second someone doesn't fit into your neat little narrative, you treat them like garbage. That landed like a punch to the gut. Even Whoopi's eyebrows shot up, her face caught between shock and, oh no, he didn't. But Joy? She didn't flinch. She leaned in, fire blazing. Better garbage than a fraud. She spat. Mark's eyes narrowed, the calm before the storm. His voice controlled but biting. Is that what you think I am? A fraud? Because I've spent my entire life proving otherwise. Joy slammed her palm down on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Oh, please. You think working your entire life means playing pretend for millions? While real people, the ones you claim to speak for, actually struggle? You're nothing but a Hollywood creation, Mark. Nothing more. Mark's fists curled on the table, knuckles whitening, the storm finally breaking through his composure. His jaw clenched, but his voice still cut clean, controlled, deadly. You can say what you want about me, but don't you dare disrespect the people who've supported me, Mark said firmly, his voice cutting through the silence. The same people you talk down to every day. Joy's laugh was sharp, cruel, dripping with venom. Oh, don't flatter yourself. Nobody supports you. They support the idea of you, because it's easier than admitting you're just another privileged man who got lucky. The tension in the studio was unbearable. You could almost feel the oxygen leave the room. Even the cameras seemed to shake as they zoomed in on Mark's face, his jaw locked tight, his eyes dark, stormy. He leaned forward, his words deliberate, each one dropping like a stone into water. You've got a lot of opinions about me, Joy. But here's the thing. You don't actually want to hear anything real. You just want to win. Joy leaned in too, refusing to break eye contact. Her voice was a dagger wrapped in silk. Oh, Mark, you don't get it. I already have. That smug smile. That was the final spark. Mark sat back in his chair, letting the silence stretch, heavy as thunderclouds. His nostrils flared as he exhaled slowly, his eyes still locked on hers like a fighter sizing up his opponent. Finally, Whoopi spoke, her voice soft, tentative. Maybe we should move on to the movie. But neither of them blinked. Neither even breathed. Joy smiled sweetly, but her eyes burned with fire. Oh no, she said slowly. We're just getting started. And Mark let out the faintest smirk, equal parts incredulous and dangerous. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it shook the studio to its core. You're right, we are. The audience froze. Every single person was holding their breath. This wasn't daytime TV anymore. It was a prize fight, and they were ringside. Mark adjusted his cufflinks with exaggerated slowness, almost ceremonious, before resting his hands back on the table. His jaw stayed tight, but his voice was sharp, steady, controlled. You really enjoy this, don't you? He asked, his tone laced with accusation. Joy raised an eyebrow, her smirk deepening. Joy what? Mark, asking the questions nobody else is brave enough to ask? Mark didn't even hesitate. He shot forward slightly, his voice cutting through like a blade. No, enjoy humiliating people. You don't care about the truth. You care about applause lines. You care about looking clever at someone else's expense. The audience erupted in murmurs, some disagreeing, all of them hooked on every word. The tension was boiling over now, spilling into the crowd. Joy scoffed, waving her hand dismissively like she was brushing him aside. Please, spare me the wounded tough guy act. You're an actor, Mark. You're good at pretending, but you don't scare me. Mark leaned back, calm, collected, deadly cool. Good, he said, his voice low, each word dripping with disdain. Because you don't impress me. The jab hit like a body shot. The audience gasped. Whoopi's eyes went wide. And Joy? Her nostrils flared as she straightened in her chair, her smirk cracking under the pressure. You know what your problem is? She snapped, her voice rising, sharp as a siren. You've spent so much time being told how great you are. You actually believe it, Joy snapped, her words landing like a slap across the table. Mark tilted his head, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. His comeback was sharp, measured, deadly. You know what your problem is? You've spent so much time tearing other people down. You've forgotten how to stand for something yourself. That one cut deep. The crowd felt it. So did Joy. She leaned back for just a second, her eyes narrowing, before slithering forward again. Cute line, she sneered. But let's talk about what you really stand for. Mediocre movies, forgettable performances, a career propped up by your abs, and that accent. Gasps echoed through the studio. Even Whoopi winced, covering her mouth like she couldn't believe Joy had gone there. Mark's jaw tightened, his composure ironclad. His voice, calm but razor-sharp. That's rich coming from someone whose entire career has been sitting here, throwing stones at people who are actually out there doing something. Joy barked out a harsh laugh, sharp and bitter. Doing what? Playing make-believe? Pretending to be a hero? While real people, like me, actually fight for something? Mark shook his head slowly, his words slicing through her claim like a blade. You're confusing fighting for something with fighting everyone. The audience erupted. Applause, cheers, even a few people standing. Mark had landed a clean hit, and for a moment, it looked like he'd stolen the room right out from under Joy. But Joy didn't flinch. Not for a second. She leaned closer, her voice dropping into a venomous hiss. You think that little speech earns you points? Please. Your whole career has been one long Boston street hustle. Just polished up for Hollywood. Mark's eyes flickered dangerously, the first visible crack in his calm exterior. Slowly, he pressed his palms flat on the table, leaning in close enough for her to see the steel in his gaze. Say what you want about me, he said quietly, each word heavy as stone. But don't you dare insult the people I grew up with. You wouldn't last a day where I'm from. Joy smirked, mistaking fire for weakness. Oh, what are you gonna do, Mark? Take me outside? Show me how tough you really are? Maybe throw a punch? Like the good old days? Mark exhaled sharply through his nose, shaking his head with a cold half-smile. That's the difference between you and me, Joy. You think strength is about shouting the loudest, or throwing the first punch. But real strength is keeping your dignity when someone like you is trying to take it away. The words landed like thunder. Even the cameras seemed to hold still, waiting for her response. Joy's lips curled into a cruel smile, her voice dripping acid. Oh, Mark, you've already lost your dignity. You're just too arrogant to notice. The silence that followed was deafening. The studio lights felt hotter, the tension pressing down on everyone like a physical weight. Mark straightened his tie slowly, his face a mask of composure. But his eyes burned with quiet fury. Then, the silence hung heavy. Joy's lips parted, but no words followed. Just a shallow breath that seemed to betray the weight of Mark's words. For the first time all night, she had no quip, no comeback, no laugh sharp enough to cut through. Mark held her gaze for a beat, then let it go, turning toward the exit once more. His voice lingered in the air like an echo that couldn't be ignored. The audience, sensing the moment's gravity, rose to their feet almost instinctively, their applause swelling into a standing ovation that shook the studio walls. Joy shrank back into her chair, her face stiff, her hands gripping the armrests as if they were the only thing keeping her grounded. The camera stayed on Mark, his figure striding toward the curtain, his shoulders squared, his dignity intact. And then he was gone. The applause didn't stop. If anything, it grew louder, an unscripted finale the producers hadn't planned for. The stage lights flickered against Joy's strained smile, exposing it for what it was. Not triumph, but the raw sting of defeat. Across living rooms, phones, and laptops everywhere, the clip was already writing itself. Mark Wahlberg walks out, leaving Joy speechless. Mark nodded once, almost to himself, then walked the final few steps to the curtain. As he disappeared into the wings, the crowd broke into thunderous applause, some standing, others chanting his name. Backstage, producers froze in disbelief while Mark brushed past, with nothing more than a quiet thank you. His face was calm again, his dignity untouched. On stage, Joy sat stiffly, staring at her hands. Her smirk was gone. Whoopi, Sarah, and Sunny exchanged uneasy glances until Whoopi finally forced a brittle smile. Well, we'll be right back after this break. But everyone knew there was no coming back. Within minutes, social media detonated. Clips of the showdown flooded TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Hashtags like Mark vs. Joy, Wahlberg walkout, and the View meltdown shot to the top of the trends. Fans dissected every glare, every pause, every word. Some praised Joy for being fearless, But the wave was against her. Mark was trending as the man who kept his cool and walked away with his pride intact. Headlines screamed, "Wahlberg walks out and wins." Joy Behar faces backlash after brutal exchange. Mark Wahlberg shows grace under fire. Even celebrities weighed in, many applauding Mark's restraint. Late-night comics made jokes. Memes spread like wildfire, and the tide of public opinion was undeniable. That evening, Mark posted just a few calm words on social media. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to challenge someone. But it's never okay to humiliate them. Everyone deserves respect, even when you don't see eye to eye. I'm proud to stand for what I believe in and to walk away when necessary. Within hours, it racked up millions of likes. Joy, for her part, stayed silence louder than any defense. And so the curtain fell, not just on an interview, but on one of the most unforgettable moments in daytime TV history. The day Mark Wahlberg walked onto The View, kept his cool as long as he could, and walked out, not defeated but victorious. But what do you think? Did Mark handle it the right way? Or did Joy just push the boundaries of tough questioning too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes Hollywood showdowns and untold celebrity moments. Because if this moment taught us anything, it's that the next explosion could be just around the corner.